Did you know there are infinite versions of Rick Sanchez, but only a finite number where he's the smartest being in the universe? That carefully curated selection is called the Central Finite Curve, and it's just one of the mind-bending concepts we'll explore as you drift off tonight. We're starting at the very beginning, before Morty, before space travel, when Rick was just a brilliant scientist with a wife named Diane and a daughter named Beth. Over these 2.5 hours, we'll connect every cosmic breadcrumb the show has dropped about Rick's history, from the citadel of Ricks to the death of his original family, all narrated at a sleep-inducing pace, perfect for animation fans looking for both knowledge and rest. What if I told you that the cynical, alcoholic Rick we know once lived a completely normal suburban life? Let's explore Rick's beginnings. Before he became the interdimensional outlaw we're familiar with, Rick Sanchez was just a brilliant scientist living in the suburbs. The show has carefully maintained an air of mystery around Rick's early life, keeping us wondering about the events that transformed him into the nihilistic genius we know today. But through carefully placed breadcrumbs throughout the series, we can piece together fragments of his past. In Season 3's The Rickshank Redemption, we get our first glimpse into Rick's past life through what he claims is a fabricated memory. This scene shows Rick as a younger man with brown hair instead of his iconic blue-gray spikes, working in a garage lab similar to the one he has in the Smith family home. The crucial difference? In this scene, Rick appears genuinely happy, sharing his life with his wife Diane and young daughter Beth. This version of Rick is almost unrecognizable compared to the character we know. He's enthusiastic about his work but not obsessed, invested in his family relationships rather than dismissing them as meaningless in an infinite multiverse. He wears the same lab coat, but there's no flask in his pocket, no burps interrupting his sentences, no cynical outlook weighing down his demeanor. This Rick smiles earnestly, speaks without sarcasm, and shows genuine love toward his family. Diane Sanchez remains one of the show's biggest mysteries. Despite being Rick's wife and Beth's mother, we know almost nothing about her character beyond her physical appearance. Blonde hair, slender build, and a warm smile that suggests she balanced out Rick's scientific intensity with emotional stability. Their relationship appears loving and supportive in the brief glimpses we see, with Diane encouraging Rick's scientific endeavors while maintaining a sense of normalcy in their family life. What's particularly interesting is that Rick shows no resistance to this domestic arrangement. The Rick we know constantly rails against family attachments and social conventions, yet his younger self seemed content within these very structures. This suggests that his current nihilism and rejection of emotional connections didn't stem from his inherent personality but developed as a response to traumatic events. Before he created the portal gun that would define his existence, Rick's scientific interests appear to have been remarkable but conventional. His garage workshop contains advanced technology for the time period, but nothing that breaks the fundamental laws of physics or crosses dimensional boundaries. Based on equipment visible in these flashbacks, Rick was likely working on advanced robotics, energy systems, and possibly early artificial intelligence. Brilliant work, certainly, but still confined to a single universe. The question of what drove Rick's original research remains fascinating. Unlike his current scientific approach, which often seems motivated by convenience, boredom, or specific needs for his adventures, young Rick appears driven by genuine scientific curiosity and perhaps a desire to improve the world. There's an optimism to his early work that has been completely eroded in his current personality. We get subtle hints that Rick wasn't always a loner in the scientific community either. Some episodes suggest he may have collaborated with other scientists before becoming the interdimensional renegade who trusts no one. His knowledge of various cosmic entities and organizations implies connections to larger scientific networks before he chose isolation. What catalyzed Rick's transition from family man to interdimensional traveler? The show deliberately keeps this pivotal moment shrouded in mystery, but the emotional devastation visible in Rick's character suggests something truly catastrophic. The creation of the portal gun technology wasn't just a scientific breakthrough. It represented a fundamental shift in Rick's relationship with reality itself. The brilliance of Rick's character design lies in this implicit backstory. The contrast between who he was and who he became creates the emotional depth that makes him more than just an alcoholic mad scientist. His extreme intelligence, which allows him to see the meaninglessness of everything in an infinite multiverse, functions as both his greatest gift and his greatest curse. The tragedy is that Rick understood enough about the universe to break it open with his portal gun, but in doing so, he broke something within himself as well. When we look at Rick's behavior throughout the series, his alcoholism, his emotional detachment, his occasional moments of vulnerability quickly buried under layers of cynicism, we're seeing the aftermath of this transformation. His intelligence remained, perhaps even grew, but his hope and connection to humanity diminished dramatically. Rick was once just a brilliant scientist with a loving family before something catastrophic changed everything, setting him on his path to becoming the smartest being in the universe. The portal gun wasn't just a device that allowed him to travel between dimensions. It was the physical manifestation of his separation from normal human existence. With each green portal he creates, Rick moves further from the man he once was, traversing not just physical dimensions but emotional ones as well. The portal gun's invention wasn't simply Rick's greatest scientific achievement, it was born from his greatest personal loss. Remember that explosion that supposedly killed Rick's family? The one he claimed was just a made-up story to fool the Galactic Federation? Season 5's finale finally confirmed what many fans suspected. Someone actually did murder Rick's wife and daughter, but the identity of the killer reveals a cosmic irony even Rick couldn't escape. The true nature of Rick's tragedy has been one of the show's most closely guarded secrets. When we first glimpsed it in The Rick Shank Redemption, Rick dismissed the memory of his family being blown up as totally fabricated. He presented it as a convenient lie designed to trick his captors. But something about that moment never quite felt right. The raw emotion in animated Rick's eyes as he watched his family die seemed too genuine, the pain too real to be simply invented. As the series progressed, the writers began dropping subtle hints that this pivotal moment might contain more truth than fiction. Rick's casual dismissal of the memory started to look more like a defense mechanism, a way to avoid confronting the trauma that fundamentally altered his existence. It's a classic Rick move, really. Deflect emotional pain with sarcasm, science, and substance abuse. The Season 5 finale finally provided confirmation of what many suspected. Rick's original Beth and Diane weren't just characters in a made-up story. They were real people whose lives were violently cut short. And the killer wasn't some random alien or government agent, but another Rick. This revelation adds layers of complexity to Rick's character and motivations. His entire journey through the multiverse hasn't just been about scientific curiosity or hedonistic pleasure-seeking. It's been fueled by grief and a burning desire for revenge against the Rick who stole everything from him. Season 7's UNM Mortican episode took this tragedy to an even more profound level. In perhaps the most devastating revelation of the entire series, we learned that Diane wasn't just killed in Rick's original universe. She was systematically erased from every universe. This cosmic-scale erasure explains why Rick never simply portals to another dimension to find another version of his wife, something he's done countless times with other family members. There are no other Dianes to find, because Rick Prime made sure they were all gone. This universal erasure represents a wound far deeper than even portal technology could heal. It explains why Rick, who can literally access infinite realities, remains haunted by the loss of one specific person. The animation in these memory sequences is particularly striking, with visual details that reflect Rick's inner turmoil. The warm colors of family life violently interrupted by explosive destruction, mirroring the shattering of Rick's emotional world. The psychological impact of this loss transformed Rick on a fundamental level. His emotional detachment and cynicism aren't just character traits, they're sophisticated coping mechanisms. When Rick says nothing matters in an infinite multiverse, he's not just being nihilistic. He's attempting to numb himself to the pain of a loss so complete it spans all of reality. His alcoholism, his casual cruelty, his inability to form lasting attachments, these are all symptoms of a cosmic grief that he can never fully process. This trauma also explains Rick's complicated relationship with family. He simultaneously pushes them away and clings to them, always maintaining the fiction that he could leave at any moment while never actually doing so. His fear of being emotionally vulnerable makes perfect sense in light of what happened to Diane. The last time he fully opened his heart, it was completely destroyed. The development of the portal gun itself takes on new meaning in this context. Was it created simply as a scientific breakthrough? Or was it specifically designed as a desperate attempt to find his family in another dimension? The evidence suggests the latter. The portal gun isn't just Rick's signature invention. It's the physical embodiment of his grief, a device built for a rescue mission that was already impossible before it began. Rick's relationship with Morty gains additional layers when viewed through this lens of loss. Morty's fears about being replaceable echo Rick's own fears of losing family. When Morty worries that he means less to Rick than Diane did, he's unknowingly touching on the wound that drives Rick's entire existence. And though Rick rarely admits it, his growing attachment to this specific Morty represents a small step toward healing. This personal tragedy connects to the larger cosmic structure of the show in fascinating ways. Rick's response to his family's murder wasn't just to grieve, it was to remake the entire multiverse in his image through the creation of the Central Finite Curve. His need for control, his determination to be the smartest being in every universe he visits, all stem from that moment when he was powerless to save the people he loved most. The death of Rick's family at the hands of Rick Prime was the catalyst that sent Rick on his interdimensional quest for revenge, fundamentally changing who he is. The brilliant family man who once pursued science out of curiosity and optimism was transformed into a broken, vengeful genius determined to hunt down his family's killer across infinite realities. This pursuit would eventually lead him to declare war not just on Rick Prime, but on every version of himself that stood in his way. Rick's rampage across the multiverse created something far more dangerous than any enemy he'd faced: a society of Ricks. What happens when a man who hates authority, bureaucracy, and even himself ends up creating an entire government of his own duplicates? The answer reveals perhaps the greatest cosmic irony in Rick's tragic story. When C-137, Rick began his hunt for Rick Prime, he didn't just target the specific Rick who killed his family. His rage was indiscriminate. He traveled from universe to universe, murdering countless versions of himself who had nothing to do with his family's death. This wasn't just revenge. It was a multiversal massacre born from unprocessed grief and misdirected fury. Rick's scientific genius, once used for creation, became a weapon for destruction as he systematically hunted down alternate versions of himself. But something unexpected happened during this interdimensional killing spree. The surviving Ricks didn't just accept their fate, they adapted, they organized. When faced with extinction at the hands of what they began calling Rick C-137, these alternate Ricks made a choice that would forever change the structure of the multiverse. They banded together for collective protection. This defensive alliance against C-137 would evolve into something much more complex: the Citadel of Ricks. What began as a survival mechanism transformed into an elaborate interdimensional society, complete with its own government, economy, and social structure. The Citadel became a sanctuary where Ricks could live without fear of C-137's vendetta. It's fascinating to consider that the entire foundation of this massive cosmic institution was built solely as a response to one man's grief-fueled rampage. The most striking aspect of the Citadel is its deeply ironic nature. Our Rick, the one we follow throughout the series, is characterized by his passionate hatred for bureaucracy, authority, and any institution that might limit his freedom. He constantly rails against the very concept of government. Yet his actions directly led to the creation of perhaps the most bureaucratic institution in the multiverse. The Citadel stands as a monument to everything Rick despises, populated entirely by versions of himself. Within the Citadel, a rigid social hierarchy emerged that further contradicts Rick's supposed values. The power structure places Ricks at the top of society, governing through a complex bureaucratic system that would make any terrestrial government seem simple by comparison. These Ricks created administrative positions, security forces, and even a council of Ricks that established laws and policies governing their interdimensional society. Even more disturbing is the underclass that formed within this system, the Mortys. Within the Citadel, Mortys are often treated as second-class citizens, relegated to menial jobs and living in segregated neighborhoods like the Mortytown Locos district. Some Mortys serve as workers in factories, others as assistants to Ricks, and some are even bought and sold as commodities. This exploitation stands in stark contrast to Rick's occasional moments of genuine care for his own Morty, revealing the dark potential of a society built entirely on Rick's worst instincts without any moral restraint. The physical structure of the Citadel itself is a marvel of interdimensional engineering. Floating in a pocket dimension accessible only via portal technology, the Citadel resembles a massive space station with distinct districts for various functions. There are residential areas where Ricks and Mortys live, commercial zones with businesses catering to their specific needs, like the Simple Rick's wafer factory that harvests memories from a captive Rick, government buildings where the council operates, and research facilities where Ricks collaborate on new technologies. What makes the Citadel truly fascinating isn't just its structure, but its influence on the broader multiverse. As a centralized hub for thousands of Ricks, it became a power center that could exert control across countless dimensions. The Citadel established interdimensional treaties, regulated portal technology, and even managed relations with other cosmic entities like the Galactic Federation. Through these activities, the Citadel effectively reshaped the dynamics of the multiverse itself. The existence of the Citadel also fundamentally changed how Rick operates within the cosmos. Before its creation, Rick was simply one rogue scientist moving between dimensions. After the Citadel's formation, he became something else, a notorious outlaw to his own kind, known across the multiverse as the Rogue Rick. His relationship with the Citadel fluctuated between outright hostility and reluctant cooperation, but he never truly belonged there despite it being filled with versions of himself. We can't discuss the Citadel without acknowledging its ultimate significance to the larger cosmic story. This institution wouldn't just remain a background element, it would eventually become central to some of the most important developments in the series. The Citadel served as the staging ground for major events that would reshape the multiverse, particularly when it came under the control of entities with agendas far different from its original purpose of protection from C-137. The most profound aspect of the Citadel might be what it reveals about Rick's character. Despite his claims of valuing absolute freedom above all else, Rick's actions created a system of control and conformity. It suggests that perhaps deep down, even Rick recognizes the need for structure in an infinite multiverse. Or perhaps it reveals that his rebellion against such structures comes from intimately understanding their inevitable corruption. The Citadel also represents something more personal for Rick, a constant reminder of his failure. Every Rick in the Citadel is a Rick who failed to catch Rick Prime, who settled for safety in numbers rather than continuing the hunt. For C-137, the Citadel stands as a monument to compromise, to giving up the pursuit of vengeance that defined his existence for so long. Perhaps this is why he holds such contempt for it, because it reminds him of the path he refused to take. Beyond the Citadel itself, Rick created something far more profound, a fundamental restructuring of the multiverse itself. The infinite multiverse isn't actually infinite for Rick at all. It's boxed in, walled off, and carefully curated to ensure that in every accessible universe, Rick remains the undisputed genius. While casually mentioned in earlier seasons, the true nature of the Central Finite Curve wasn't fully revealed until the Season 5 finale, completely reshaping our understanding of Rick's cosmic position. What initially seemed like just another piece of sci-fi jargon turned out to be perhaps the most important cosmic concept in the entire series. The Central Finite Curve isn't just a location or a theory. It's an artificial construct that fundamentally alters how the multiverse functions for Rick and those traveling with him. Think about it. In a truly infinite multiverse, every possibility exists. There should be countless universes where Rick isn't the smartest being, where creatures with intellects far beyond his own would pose significant threats or challenges. Yet, throughout his adventures, Rick consistently maintains his position as the most intelligent being he encounters. This isn't coincidence or plot convenience, it's by deliberate design. The Ricks collectively engineered a walled-off section of the multiverse containing only universes where Rick is the smartest being. This massive act of cosmic engineering essentially created a playground where Rick's intellectual supremacy is guaranteed. It's a filtered version of infinity, containing only the realities that cater to Rick's ego and ensure his dominance. The technology required to create such a structure is almost incomprehensible. Consider what it would take to identify, isolate, and wall off specific universes from an infinite set. The computational power alone would be staggering, requiring the ability to scan and categorize countless realities based on the presence and intellectual capacity of every Rick variant. Then to create a barrier separating these selected universes from the larger multiverse would require manipulation of the fundamental fabric of reality itself. When we consider the engineering achievements of humanity, our greatest bridges, our most complex computers, they pale in comparison to what Rick accomplished. The Central Finite Curve represents cosmic engineering on a scale that transcends normal scientific achievement. It's godlike manipulation of reality itself, reinforcing just how far beyond normal human capability Rick's genius extends. But the Central Finite Curve isn't just a testament to Rick's brilliance, it also reveals something profoundly insecure about his character. Why would someone with Rick's intelligence need to ensure he never encounters beings smarter than himself? The answer speaks to Rick's deep-seated fear of vulnerability, of being outmatched, of losing control. In creating this cosmic safe space, Rick betrays his own insecurity. He's afraid of what might exist beyond his intellectual dominance. The curve also functions as Rick's prison. By limiting which universes he can access to only those where he's dominant, Rick has trapped himself in a cosmic echo chamber. He's surrounded himself with universes that reflect and reinforce his own superiority, cutting himself off from potentially transformative encounters with greater minds. It's the ultimate example of Rick's self-sabotage. In securing his position as the smartest being in his accessible multiverse, he's denied himself the opportunity for genuine growth or challenge. This concept fundamentally changes how we understand Rick's adventures. Every portal he steps through, every alien world he visits, every cosmic entity he encounters, they all exist within this artificial bubble where Rick's supremacy is assured. His freedom to explore the cosmos is revealed to be an illusion. He's only exploring a carefully curated subset of what truly exists. The implications extend to everyone in Rick's orbit as well. Morty, Summer, Beth, and Jerry, their entire understanding of the multiverse is shaped by this limitation. They've only experienced realities where Rick is the smartest being. Imagine how their perspective might change if they encountered universes where Rick was considered intellectually average, or even below average. Creator Scott Marder has indicated that the Central Finite Curve is a crucial aspect of the show's narrative, suggesting it will play a significant role in future storylines and character developments. This makes sense. Once a concept this fundamental to the show's cosmology is revealed, it can't simply be ignored. The Central Finite Curve represents both the height of Rick's power and the depth of his limitations. It's simultaneously a demonstration of his unparalleled cosmic engineering capability and a manifestation of his greatest fears. In creating this barrier, Rick has both declared his intellectual dominance and revealed his terror of what might exist beyond it. For a man who constantly preaches nihilism and the meaninglessness of existence, Rick has gone to extraordinary lengths to maintain control over his corner of the multiverse. It suggests that despite his claims about nothing mattering, Rick cares deeply about maintaining his position as the smartest being in existence. His cosmic engineering isn't just scientific achievement, it's ego protection on an unprecedented scale. And as with any prison, there are those who seek escape. The hints throughout the series about challenges to the Central Finite Curve suggest that Rick's carefully constructed reality may not be as secure as he believes. There are forces both within and beyond the curve that threaten to dismantle Rick's cosmic manipulation, potentially exposing him to realities where he isn't the dominant intellect. When you really look at it, Rick's portal gun might be the most revealing piece of technology in the entire show. Those swirling green doorways don't just represent a convenient plot device for moving our characters around. They're a visual signature of genuine genius that sets Rick apart from nearly every other version of himself in the multiverse. You know, how we've seen Rick casually flip open his portal gun in countless episodes, creating that iconic emerald gateway that lets him escape any situation? Season 7 finally revealed something that changes how we view those green portals completely. Across the vast, infinite multiverse containing countless Ricks, only 2 actually invented portal technology themselves: our Rick, C137, and Rick Prime. Every other Rick we've encountered simply copied the design, making the original portal gun perhaps the rarest technology in existence. This revelation transforms our understanding of Rick's position in the cosmos. It's not just that he's brilliant, we already knew that, but that he possesses a singular type of genius that even other versions of himself couldn't replicate. That distinctive green color isn't arbitrary. It signifies original technology. When we see different colored portals throughout the series, we're actually witnessing derivative technology, visual proof that those Ricks are merely imitators rather than innovators. The portal gun itself is deceptively simple in appearance. A handheld device with minimal controls that belies the unfathomable complexity within. With a simple trigger pull, it tears open the fabric between dimensions, creating a stable pathway that allows matter to pass through unharmed. But consider what's happening on a quantum level. The device is identifying coordinates across infinite realities, calculating exact dimensional frequencies, and then creating a stable bridge between points in a multiverse that shouldn't logically be able to connect. What makes this even more impressive is that Rick built this technology from scratch, without the benefit of seeing another working model. While most scientific advancement builds incrementally on previous discoveries, Rick's portal technology represents a complete paradigm shift in understanding the fundamental nature of reality. It's like someone in the Middle Ages suddenly inventing an iPhone. The conceptual leap is so vast it seems almost impossible. The portal gun's limitations are equally revealing about Rick's character. In Season 6, when the device breaks down, we see a rare vulnerability in Rick. Without his ability to instantly escape any situation, he's forced to find creative workarounds and rely on others in ways he clearly finds uncomfortable. These moments of technological failure show that despite his godlike abilities, Rick remains dependent on tools that can fail. His genius isn't infallible, and the portal gun requires constant maintenance and occasional modifications. We've witnessed Rick tinkering with his portal gun throughout the series, making adjustments for specific dimensional coordinates or particular situations. These modifications aren't just plot convenience. They're showing us that portal technology isn't static. It's something Rick continues to refine and adapt. Even revolutionary technology can be improved upon, and Rick's ongoing relationship with his greatest invention reveals his persistent perfectionism. The green portals also serve as a visual metaphor for Rick's emotional state. They're unstable, swirling vortices, beautiful but dangerous, offering escape but leading to unpredictable destinations. Like Rick himself, they represent both freedom and chaos, opportunity and risk. The fact that Rick created technology mirroring his emotional landscape suggests a deep connection between his psychological makeup and his scientific output. When we track the evolution of the portal gun through the series, we can see how it functions both as Rick's greatest tool and his emotional crutch. The device gives him unlimited freedom to escape any uncomfortable situation, any confrontation, any moment of genuine connection. With a flick of his wrist, he can literally leave problems behind in another dimension. This instantaneous escape mechanism has allowed Rick to avoid emotional growth for decades, as he never has to fully face consequences. The cosmic significance of the portal gun extends beyond mere transportation. By allowing Rick to navigate the Central Finite Curve at will, it functions as the key to his self-constructed reality. He created a walled-off section of the multiverse and then gave himself exclusive access to it through technology only he truly understands. The portal gun isn't just a tool, it's the master key to Rick's carefully engineered kingdom. What's particularly fascinating is that despite the portal gun's godlike capabilities, it still has boundaries. It can only access dimensions within the Central Finite Curve, the walled-off section of reality where Rick reigns supreme. This limitation wasn't a technological failure but a deliberate design choice, revealing Rick's deep-seated insecurity. He intentionally limited his most powerful technology to keep himself safe from encountering beings smarter than himself. This self-imposed restriction speaks volumes about Rick's character. For all his bravado about embracing cosmic nihilism and accepting the meaninglessness of existence, he's carefully constructed a pocket multiverse where he's guaranteed superiority. His portal gun, the very symbol of his freedom, is actually programmed with artificial constraints that protect his fragile ego. The technology also carries tremendous symbolic weight in the show's narrative. When evil Morty creates yellow portals that can breach the Central Finite Curve, it represents a fundamental challenge to Rick's technological supremacy. Someone has taken Rick's greatest invention and improved upon it in ways he never conceived, or perhaps never allowed himself to conceive. That moment marks one of the few times we see Rick genuinely afraid, as his technological dominance is directly challenged. Portal technology also connects directly to Rick's quest for revenge. After his family's murder, he didn't immediately possess the means to track down their killer across infinite dimensions. The development of portal technology wasn't just a scientific breakthrough. It was the essential tool that would allow him to hunt Rick Prime across the vastness of the multiverse. His greatest invention was born from his greatest loss, with the specific purpose of avenging that loss. Behind Rick's dismissive explanation that Morty's brainwaves provide convenient camouflage lies one of the show's greatest contradictions. If Mortys are truly interchangeable as Rick claims, then why does he risk everything to protect this specific Morty? The answer reveals the emotional architecture of the entire series. When we first learn about the Rick-Morty dynamic, it seems purely utilitarian. Rick explains that his genius brainwaves are easily detected by enemies, but Morty's complementary brainwaves cancel them out, essentially making them invisible. It's a convenient excuse that allows Rick to maintain his detached persona while keeping his grandson close. But as time goes on, this explanation begins to feel like a flimsy cover for something much deeper. What makes this relationship particularly fascinating is how it evolves from Rick treating Morty as a disposable tool to something far more meaningful. We see instances where Rick could easily replace Morty with any other version from the infinite multiverse, yet he consistently chooses not to. This directly contradicts his repeated claims that Mortys are interchangeable, revealing the first cracks in Rick's emotional armor. The series cleverly introduces the concept of the one true Morty, a notion that initially appears in the context of a religious cult among Mortys at the Citadel. While presented as a messianic figure in that context, the concept takes on new meaning when we consider Rick's growing attachment to his specific Morty. Despite the infinite Mortys available across dimensions, Rick forms a unique bond with this particular version, suggesting that perhaps there is something cosmically significant about their specific relationship. This specificity challenges one of the show's central nihilistic premises. In a multiverse where everything is infinitely replaceable and therefore meaningless, Rick's choice to value this specific Morty stands as a profound contradiction. It's not just sentimentality. It's a direct refutation of the cosmic emptiness Rick claims to embrace. As the series progresses, Morty gradually transforms from a terrified sidekick into a more capable and independent character. This evolution fundamentally alters their relationship dynamic. Early season adventures featured Morty panicking while Rick dragged him through danger, but later seasons show Morty confidently navigating cosmic threats and even occasionally outsmarting Rick. This growing competence forces Rick to interact with Morty more as a partner than a tool, further cementing their unique bond. The transformation in Morty isn't just about capability, it's about identity. Through his adventures with Rick, Morty develops a perspective that's neither as nihilistic as Rick's nor as naive as when he started. He becomes something entirely new, a character who understands the meaninglessness of the multiverse but chooses to care anyway. This philosophical middle ground makes him increasingly valuable to Rick beyond simple brainwave camouflage. One of the most revealing moments comes in the Season 7 finale, when Morty expresses a deep-seated fear that he means less to Rick than Diane did. It's a vulnerable moment that cuts to the core of their relationship. What's particularly telling isn't just what's said, but what isn't. Rick's subtle response suggests that Morty has become just as important to him, perhaps even more so because this relationship is one Rick has chosen rather than one he was born into. The cosmic significance of their relationship extends beyond personal attachment. In a multiverse structured around Rick's supreme intelligence, via the Central Finite Curve, Morty represents something Rick can't fully understand or control. While Rick masters the physical laws of the universe, Morty embodies emotional intelligence and moral clarity that repeatedly challenge Rick's worldview. This creates a cosmic balance. Rick navigates the physical multiverse, while Morty navigates its emotional landscape. This relationship also serves as the emotional foundation for the entire series. Without his connection to Morty, Rick would likely have succumbed entirely to the nihilism that threatens to consume him. Morty provides something that portal technology and scientific genius cannot: a reason to care about what happens in an otherwise meaningless multiverse. He anchors Rick to humanity in a way that transcends simple companionship. What's particularly fascinating is how reluctant Rick is to acknowledge this dependence. He continues to maintain the facade that Morty is merely useful for camouflage, long after his actions have proven otherwise. This reluctance speaks to Rick's fundamental fear, not of cosmic threats or rival geniuses, but of emotional vulnerability. The true power of their relationship lies in how it gradually chips away at this fear, revealing the wounded humanity beneath Rick's cynical exterior. Their dynamic also creates an interesting paradox. The more Rick teaches Morty about the multiverse, the more Morty develops independence and agency that may eventually lead him away from Rick. This creates an underlying tension where Rick simultaneously needs Morty to remain close but also inadvertently gives him the tools to leave. This contradiction mirrors Rick's own internal struggle between emotional connection and detachment. The series further complicates this relationship through the existence of other Rick-Morty pairings across the multiverse. We see countless variations of this relationship, some more functional, others deeply dysfunctional, suggesting that while the cosmic significance of the Rick-Morty bond may be universal, the specific form it takes is uniquely defined by their individual choices and experiences. This bond ultimately transcends its initial purpose, becoming something neither character fully anticipated. What began as Rick simply using Morty gradually transforms into a relationship that challenges the very nihilism at Rick's core. In a multiverse defined by infinite possibilities, their specific connection emerges as something irreplaceable, a direct contradiction to the cosmic meaninglessness Rick claims to embrace. In the vast multiverse of Ricks and Mortys, there exists a version who refused to accept the hierarchy imposed upon him. While most Mortys serve as compliant sidekicks, evil Morty emerged as something far more dangerous, a strategic genius capable of challenging the entire cosmic structure Rick had carefully engineered. Evil Morty first appeared in Season 1's Close Rick Counters of the Rick Kind, initially presented as a mysterious antagonist controlling a Rick through an eye patch that concealed advanced technology. This early appearance only hinted at the character's true significance, as his full plans remained hidden for several seasons. What made Evil Morty immediately unsettling wasn't just his willingness to harm other Ricks, but his calculated intelligence, a direct contradiction to how Ricks view Mortys across the multiverse. What we didn't know in those early episodes was that Evil Morty was orchestrating a long-term strategy to fundamentally alter the multiverse itself. His ascension to power at the Citadel marked a crucial turning point, as he successfully manipulated the political system to become President Morty. What appeared to be a democratic victory actually represented a carefully engineered coup of the entire Rick-dominated power structure. As president of the Citadel, Evil Morty implemented sweeping changes that seemed progressive on the surface, improved rights for Mortys, and structural reforms to the Citadel's government. Yet these changes masked his true agenda. He wasn't interested in making the Citadel more equitable. He was gathering the resources and intelligence necessary to accomplish something no other being had managed: escape from the Central Finite Curve entirely. This goal reveals why Evil Morty stands as Rick's most formidable opponent. Unlike other antagonists who battle Rick within the established rules of the multiverse, Evil Morty recognized the entire system as a prison constructed by Ricks. His ambition wasn't simply to defeat Rick, but to escape the closed system where Ricks maintain cosmic supremacy. This represents a challenge not just to individual Ricks, but to the very foundation of how the show's multiverse functions. The Season 5 finale delivered the culmination of Evil Morty's plan when he successfully breached the Central Finite Curve. Using the collective data and resources of the Citadel, he created a yellow portal, visually distinct from Rick's green ones, that allowed access to universes where Rick isn't the smartest being. As he stepped through this portal, Evil Morty didn't just defeat Rick. He proved the entire multiversal system Rick created could be broken. This moment fundamentally shifted the cosmic balance of the show. If the Central Finite Curve was Rick's way of ensuring his supremacy across realities, Evil Morty's breach exposed the artificial nature of Rick's dominance. It suggested that Rick's position as the smartest being wasn't a natural cosmic law, but a carefully constructed illusion maintained through multiversal engineering. Evil. Morty's return in Season 7 elevated his threat level even further. The episode Mortican revealed him as more than just an escapee from Rick's system. He had become a multiversal manipulator in his own right. His acquisition of the Omega device granted him the power to erase beings from existence entirely, positioning him as perhaps the only character with power that genuinely frightens Rick. What makes Evil Morty's character so compelling is how he's evolved from a simple villain to a complex figure who serves as a dark reflection of what Morty's could become when freed from Rick's influence. He's not motivated by petty revenge or simple malice. His actions stem from a philosophical rejection of the arbitrary limitations imposed by Ricks across the multiverse. The episode features subtle but meaningful visual and musical cues that reinforce Evil Morty's significance. The use of the Mazzy Star song from Rick Potion No. 9 creates a powerful callback to one of the show's most existentially charged episodes, underscoring the weight of Evil Morty's actions. This musical theme connects his rebellion to the show's deeper questions about meaning and identity in an infinite cosmos. Evil Morty's manipulation of events from behind the scenes showcases his intelligence and strategic thinking. Unlike Rick, who often relies on improvisational genius and technological superiority, Evil Morty demonstrates patience and long-term planning. His calculation extends to taking out Rick Prime in Season 7, eliminating the original target of our Rick's revenge quest, and demonstrating that he understands the emotional core of Rick's motivations. The confrontation between Rick and Evil Morty represents more than just a battle between characters. It's a clash between different philosophies about freedom and power in the multiverse. Rick's approach has always been to exploit the system while maintaining it. Evil Morty seeks to break the system entirely, suggesting that true freedom can only come from escaping the constraints Rick himself helped create. By establishing himself as a more compelling antagonist than even Rick Prime, Evil Morty has shifted the show's cosmic stakes. He's not just a villain to be defeated in a single adventure. He represents an existential challenge to the entire premise of the show. His ability to see the cage that contains all Ricks and Mortys, and his success in breaking through it, raises profound questions about whether Rick's intelligence truly makes him superior, or whether it simply made him the architect of a different kind of prison. What's particularly fascinating about Evil Morty is that his ultimate goal isn't conquest or destruction, it's escape. He seeks a life beyond the reach of Rick's influence, in universes where different rules and possibilities exist. This positions him not simply as an antagonist, but as a revolutionary figure challenging the established order of the entire cosmos, as we've understood it through Rick's eyes. While Evil Morty operates on a cosmic scale to dismantle the systems that constrain him, there exists a more intimate threat to our Rick, a shadow that haunted him across countless dimensions for decades. What happens when the monster you've been hunting turns out to be a darker version of yourself? This is the twisted reality Rick C137 had to face when confronting Rick Prime. In the vast hierarchy of Ricks, two stand apart as true originals. Most Ricks across the multiverse received their portal technology from someone else, passing down copied designs like hand-me-down clothing. But C137, Rick and Rick Prime belong to a different category altogether. They independently invented interdimensional travel, marking them as uniquely brilliant even among geniuses. This shared achievement creates an unsettling mirror between nemesis and protagonist, linking them in ways that transcend their mutual hatred. Rick Prime represents the purest expression of what makes Rick's dangerous. Genius without conscience, innovation without attachment, power without purpose beyond self-interest. Where our Rick maintains some fragile connections to family despite his cynicism, Rick Prime systematically eliminated these vulnerabilities from his life. He didn't just murder Diane, he erased her from every conceivable reality, a cosmic-scale act of emotional amputation that reveals the terrifying extent of his detachment. What makes this antagonist so compelling isn't just his cruelty but the uncomfortable truth he represents. When our Rick looks at Rick Prime, he sees not just his family's killer but a version of himself that could have been. One who fully embraced the cold logic of an infinite multiverse where nothing matters. Rick Prime functions as both antagonist and existential warning, the embodiment of what happens when a Rick completely surrenders his humanity. The cosmic irony thickens when we consider Rick Prime's relationship to Morty. In the twisted web of multiverse connections, our Morty's biological grandfather isn't C-137, but rather the very Rick that C-137 has hunted across dimensions. This creates an uncomfortable biological reality that neither Rick nor Morty can escape. The blood of the monster flows in Morty's veins. Their connection transcends mere adventure companions. They're bound by a shared trauma, inflicted by the same man, making their partnership a form of mutual healing neither would likely acknowledge. Rick Prime's casual disregard for family stands in stark contrast to our Rick's complicated relationship with his adopted family. Where C-137 struggles with vulnerability, using cynicism and science to maintain emotional distance while still orbiting his loved ones, Prime simply cut those ties completely. This fundamental difference between the two geniuses suggests that despite all his flaws, our Rick retained something essential that Prime discarded: the capacity to form meaningful attachments. The pursuit of Rick Prime shaped C-137's existence for decades, providing structure and purpose in an otherwise meaningless multiverse. Every adventure, every invention, every dimension-hopping escapade contained within it the sublimated quest for vengeance. This single-minded focus served as both motivation and psychological crutch. As long as Rick Prime lived, C-137 had a reason to continue his own existence, a North Star in an infinite sea of possibilities. Season 7 brought this decades-long pursuit to its conclusion, but the anticipated catharsis didn't materialize as expected. After finally defeating his nemesis, Rick found himself adrift in an unexpected emotional quagmire. The death of Rick Prime created not closure, but crisis. The target that had defined his existence for so long was gone, leaving a vacuum of purpose. What does revenge mean when it doesn't heal the wounds that motivated it? What happens to a man who achieved his life's goal only to discover it changed nothing about his pain? This existential crisis forced Rick to confront a terrifying possibility. Perhaps his trauma wasn't the source of his emptiness, but merely its justification. Without Rick Prime to hunt, without vengeance to pursue, Rick faces the prospect that his disconnect from existence might be intrinsic rather than inflicted. The universe didn't break Rick. It merely provided the context in which his brokenness could express itself. The defeat of Rick Prime also raises questions about Rick's uniqueness in the multiverse. Both inventors of portal technology embarked on radically different paths. One toward family, however reluctantly, and one away from it. This divergence suggests that even at the highest levels of intelligence, choice still matters. Determinism doesn't dictate destiny, even for beings who can perceive the mechanisms of reality itself. Our Rick chose a different path than Prime, maintaining connections however fraught, preserving some fragment of humanity however buried. The emotional aftermath of Rick Prime's defeat resonates through Season 7, as Rick struggles to find new meaning. Having accomplished the revenge that drove him for decades, he faces the same void that awaits any crusader when their crusade ends. The satisfaction proves hollow, the emptiness remains, and Rick must confront the possibility that meaning in an infinite multiverse must be self-generated rather than discovered. This necessary reinvention coincides with evil Morty's ascension to cosmic threat, creating a narrative transition where one nemesis falls as another rises. Yet the challenges they represent couldn't be more different. Rick Prime threatened Rick's past, embodying the trauma that shaped him. Evil Morty threatens Rick's future, challenging the cosmic order Rick established to protect himself from precisely the kind of power Evil Morty now wields. The parallel timing of Rick Prime's defeat and Evil Morty's acquisition of the Omega device creates a perfect storm of vulnerability for Rick. His emotional defenses are compromised by the loss of his primary motivation, just as a new threat emerges that requires all his focus. This convergence forces Rick to evolve or perish, to find new purpose beyond revenge if he hopes to counter Evil Morty's growing power. While Rick's battle with his nemesis shaped his personal quest, his war against the Galactic Federation reveals something even more fundamental about his character. When Rick crashed a wedding, assassinated multiple heads of state, and collapsed an entire interstellar economy without breaking a sweat, he wasn't just being chaotic. He was making a statement about freedom that cuts to the core of who he really is. The Galactic Federation stands as one of the most expansive power structures in the Rick and Morty universe, a sprawling bureaucratic empire controlling thousands of planets across multiple star systems. This massive interstellar government operates through layers of administration, alien diplomats, and a military force dedicated to maintaining their version of cosmic order. Their influence extends so far that even Earth eventually joined their ranks, though not for long, thanks to Rick Sanchez. Rick's relationship with the Federation goes beyond typical antagonism. His status as their most wanted criminal speaks volumes about his past activities and the threat he represents to their entire system. The intensity of his hatred suggests something deeply personal in their history, a conflict that precedes most events we've seen in the series. When we watch Rick interact with Federation officials, there's a palpable contempt that seems reserved specifically for them, an antagonism that burns hotter than his usual disdain for authority figures. What makes Rick particularly dangerous to the Federation isn't just his intelligence or inventions, it's his fundamental rejection of what they represent. The Federation stands for order, structure, and control across the cosmos. They regulate travel between worlds, monitor technological development, and impose their standards of civilization on member planets. For someone like Rick, who values absolute freedom above all else, the Federation represents the ultimate constraint on his existence. In the Season 3 premiere, we witness the breathtaking scope of Rick's rebellion against this cosmic institution. Imprisoned in the Federation's highest security facility, Rick orchestrates perhaps his most elegant act of chaos, not through violence, but through economics. By hacking their central computer and changing the value of their currency from 1 to 0, he brings down their entire economy in seconds. The systematic collapse that follows, with Federation officials committing suicide as their government implodes, demonstrates Rick's understanding that even the most powerful organizations have vulnerabilities if you know where to look. This wasn't just an escape plan, it was a statement. Rick could have simply broken out of prison, but instead, he chose to shatter the entire system that imprisoned him. The casual way he accomplished this suggests he could have done it any time, but waited for the right moment to maximize impact. It's not enough for Rick to escape the Federation. He needs to humiliate it to prove its fundamental weakness compared to his individual brilliance. Rick's anti-authority stance extends far beyond just the Galactic Federation. We see this pattern repeated with the Citadel of Ricks, the Council of Ricks, and virtually any organized power structure he encounters. The consistency of this behavior points to something deeper than mere rebelliousness. It reflects a philosophical position that rejects all external limitation. For Rick, any system that attempts to impose rules represents a cage, regardless of whether that cage is built by alien bureaucrats or versions of himself. What makes this particularly interesting is how Rick's behavior contrasts with his own creation of power structures. The man who brought down the Federation also helped create the Central Finite Curve, perhaps the ultimate expression of control over reality itself. This contradiction suggests that Rick doesn't truly reject authority as a concept. He rejects authority he doesn't control. His issue isn't with power, but with who wields it. The Federation eventually returns in later episodes, rebuilt from the ashes of Rick's destruction. Their persistence highlights an important truth about Rick's rebellion. Destroying systems is easier than preventing their return. No matter how thoroughly Rick dismantles his enemies, The fundamental impulse toward order and control in the universe ensures they will eventually reconstitute themselves in some form. This creates a perpetual cycle of rebellion for Rick, a never-ending battle against the universe's tendency toward organization. When examining why Rick fights so fiercely against the Federation, we must consider his traumatic history. Having lost his family and spent decades hunting their killer across dimensions, Rick has experienced firsthand how quickly control can be stripped away. His rebellion against cosmic authority can be understood as a response to that loss. If he can't control what happens to those he loves, he'll ensure nothing else controls him either. Every act of defiance against the Federation is, in some ways, a refusal to be vulnerable again. The Federation's attempts to standardize and regulate the cosmos represent everything Rick rejects about conventional existence. Their bureaucracy mirrors the mundane suburban life he once had and lost, a life of rules, routines, and limitations. By destroying their infrastructure, Rick isn't just fighting an enemy. He's symbolically rejecting the very concept of a predetermined path through life. For a man who can access infinite realities, accepting any single authority's vision of how things should be would be tantamount to surrendering his greatest power: choice. Perhaps most revealing is Rick's methods for fighting the Federation. Rather than simply using overwhelming force, Rick consistently exploits the Federation's own systems against it. He understands that bureaucracies contain the seeds of their own destruction: rigidity, predictability, and dependence on established protocols. By inserting chaos into ordered systems, Rick creates chain reactions that bring down structures far larger than himself. It's not just rebellion. It's a philosophy about the fundamental weakness of organized power compared to individual adaptability. Rick's masterful construction of the Central Finite Curve might have cemented his status as the smartest being in reality. But what happens when the walls of this cosmic prison finally come down? Evil Morty's yellow portal represents more than just a dramatic visual. It's a gateway to Rick's deepest existential nightmare: worlds where he isn't the supreme intellect. The yellow portal itself is visually significant. While Rick's signature green portals have become symbolic of his control over the multiverse, Evil Morty's golden gateway signals something fundamentally different: access to realities that Rick deliberately walled off. This color shift isn't merely aesthetic, but represents a complete paradigm change in how characters can interact with the multiverse. Yellow becomes the visual language for beyond Rick's control, a concept that terrifies a character who's built his entire identity around being the smartest being in existence. When we try to understand why the Ricks went to such extraordinary lengths to isolate themselves from these universes, we have to look at what motivated the creation of the Central Finite Curve in the first place. It wasn't just about maintaining Rick's superiority. It was about protecting his fragile ego. The curve represents perhaps the greatest cosmic con ever perpetrated, a massive wall separating universes where Rick dominates from those where he might be outmatched. This artificial boundary reveals Rick's deepest fear, that in the grand scheme of things, he might be utterly insignificant. The Season 5 finale hinted at these terrifying possibilities when Evil Morty finally broke through. But what's even more interesting is what the show's creators have suggested about these new universes. They've indicated that the universes beyond the Central Finite Curve could introduce entirely new characters and threats, expanding the storytelling possibilities for future seasons. This isn't just a minor plot point. It's a fundamental shift in the show's cosmic framework that opens up narratives involving beings that could challenge Rick's supremacy. What kind of entities might exist beyond the curve? We can only speculate, but they would likely possess intellects that dwarf even Rick's genius. These could be hyperdimensional beings who view Rick the way Rick views simple microorganisms, or entities so advanced they can manipulate reality itself without technology. Perhaps there are beings who transcended physical form altogether, existing as pure consciousness or energy. The most terrifying prospect might be intelligences so alien that Rick couldn't even comprehend their thought processes or motivations. A true cosmic horror scenario where his analytical mind, his greatest weapon, becomes utterly useless. Rick's genius has always been his defining characteristic, the core of his identity. In universes where that genius is outmatched, What remains of Rick Sanchez? This question strikes at the heart of who Rick is and explains his desperate need to maintain the Central Finite Curve. Without his intellectual supremacy, Rick might be forced to confront his own cosmic insignificance, something he's spent decades avoiding through substance abuse, nihilistic philosophy, and constant dimension-hopping adventures. The breach of the Central Finite Curve carries massive implications for our characters. For Rick, it represents an existential threat to his self-perception and established place in the cosmos. For Morty, who's grown up believing his grandfather is the ultimate authority on everything, these new universes might offer liberation from Rick's shadow. And for side characters like Summer, Beth, and Jerry, exposure to intelligences beyond Rick could fundamentally alter their understanding of the multiverse and their place within it. This cosmic revelation also adds significant context to evil Morty's actions. His determination to escape the Central Finite Curve wasn't just about getting away from Rick. It was about accessing a portion of reality where new rules apply, where Rick's dominance isn't guaranteed. The episode UNM Mortican further builds on this by showing that Rick Prime, who represented Rick's past trauma, isn't even the most significant threat anymore. The existence of these new universes implies that there are entities that could make Rick Prime look like a minor nuisance in comparison. From a storytelling perspective, breaking the Central Finite Curve accomplishes something remarkable. After 6 seasons of establishing Rick as nearly omnipotent, capable of solving almost any problem through his genius, the show has suddenly introduced a vast new playground where the rules that viewers have come to understand no longer apply. This allows for entirely new types of stories where Rick's intelligence alone might not be enough to save the day. The creators have expressed this exact sentiment, noting that the introduction of these new universes allows for a broader exploration of themes related to power dynamics and the nature of intelligence within the multiverse. Future episodes might delve into these complex relationships, perhaps showing Rick struggling to adapt to environments where he isn't automatically the cleverest person in the room. This could force character growth in ways previously impossible within the confines of the Central Finite Curve. The breaking of the curve also raises profound questions about free will and determinism within the show's universe. If Rick artificially limited his multiverse to only those realities where he dominates, what does this say about the true nature of infinite possibility? Perhaps the curve itself was a desperate attempt to impose order on chaos, to create a small pocket of predictability in an otherwise incomprehensible reality. With that structure now fractured, both characters and viewers must reconsider everything they thought they understood about how this cosmos functions. The most fascinating aspect of these new universes is that they force Rick to confront the cosmic lie at the heart of his existence. He spent years convincing himself and others that his nihilism stems from understanding the meaninglessness of everything in an infinite multiverse. Yet his creation of the Central Finite Curve reveals this philosophy as a facade. Rick doesn't truly embrace the chaos of infinity. Instead, he's been carefully curating his reality, hiding from the true cosmic wilderness where he might not be special at all. While Rick's multiversal manipulations paint him as an all-powerful cosmic architect, his most vulnerable confession has been hiding in plain sight all along. That seemingly random catchphrase, "wubba lubba dub dub," the one Rick bellows with apparent glee while causing chaos, isn't just some meaningless string of sounds he created for fun. It's actually a coded message that none of the human characters could possibly understand. A deliberate linguistic choice that reveals just how much Rick wants someone to know his pain, while simultaneously ensuring almost no one can interpret it. Bird Person's translation of Rick's catchphrase as, "I am in great pain, please help me," changes everything we thought we knew about Rick's boisterous personality. Think about it. In all those early episodes when Rick would shout his catchphrase after some apparently joyful moment, he was actually broadcasting his despair in a language only Bird Person, and perhaps a handful of others in the entire multiverse could understand. It's like writing a suicide note in ancient Sumerian and leaving it on your coffee table. Technically, you've told the truth, but you've done it in a way almost guaranteed to go unnoticed. This linguistic sleight of hand speaks volumes about Rick's relationship with vulnerability. He's simultaneously desperate to be understood and terrified of it happening. By encoding his pain in an alien language, Rick gets to perform the act of confession without risking the actual consequences, namely, that someone might actually try to help him. Because what's scarier to Rick than pain? The possibility that someone might witness it and offer connection. When we re-examine Rick's behavior through this lens, so many of his mannerisms take on new meaning. His exaggerated enthusiasm, his manic energy, and his relentless pursuit of the next adventure all serve as elaborate distractions, not just for his family, but for himself. Every time Rick drags Morty into danger, he's not just seeking scientific discovery or interdimensional thrills. He's running from the crushing weight of his own consciousness. The louder and more chaotic Rick becomes, the more we should recognize it as the sound of a man desperately trying to drown out his own thoughts. The tragedy deepens when we consider that humor is Rick's primary shield against vulnerability. His jokes aren't just for entertainment, they're a sophisticated defense mechanism. When Rick makes a nihilistic joke about existence being meaningless, he's not just being edgy, he's building a philosophical bunker where emotional pain becomes irrelevant. If nothing matters, then his suffering doesn't either. It's a circular logic that allows him to keep functioning despite carrying trauma that would flatten most people. What makes Rick's particular brand of loneliness so profound is its cosmic scale. He's not just separated from others by personality or circumstance. He's isolated himself on a multiversal level. Through the Central Finite Curve, Rick has literally restructured reality to ensure he remains unchallenged intellectually. But the side effect of this cosmic engineering is that he's created a prison of his own superiority. When you're always the smartest person in the room, in every conceivable room across infinite dimensions, genuine connection becomes nearly impossible. This isolation is perfectly captured in the contradiction of Rick's catchphrase, a cry for help shouted gleefully in a language almost no one understands. It's simultaneously an act of reaching out and pulling away, revealing the fundamental push-pull at the core of Rick's character. He wants connection desperately but fears it might destroy the carefully constructed persona he's built to survive his trauma. Language plays a crucial role throughout the series in revealing Rick's inner state. Beyond his catchphrase, Rick's constant belching and slurred speech act as another barrier between himself and others, a physical manifestation of his emotional walls. Even his scientific terminology serves this purpose. By explaining the universe in complex jargon that others can't follow, Rick maintains his isolation while appearing to communicate. It's communication designed to fail, interaction without the risk of real connection. The genius of Rick's character is that his pain doesn't make him noble or even particularly sympathetic. It makes him dangerous. Unlike traditional tragic heroes whose suffering ennobles them, Rick's pain has transformed him into someone who inflicts suffering on others. He drags his family into life-threatening situations, abandons them when it's convenient, and manipulates their emotions with casual cruelty. The revelation about his catchphrase doesn't excuse these behaviors. It merely explains them. Rick's pain isn't beautiful, it's toxic, infectious, and self-perpetuating. Perhaps the most poignant moments in the series are the rare instances where Rick's carefully constructed facade cracks, revealing the wounded person beneath. These glimpses are fleeting but powerful. A tear quickly wiped away, a moment of genuine care for Morty before the walls come back up, a drunken confession immediately followed by denial. These aren't just character moments, they're cosmic revelations about the nature of intelligence in Rick's universe. The smartest being in the multiverse is smart enough to know he's miserable, but not quite smart enough to know how to stop being miserable. What makes Rick's emotional journey cosmic rather than merely personal is how it intersects with the show's larger themes about infinity and meaning. In a multiverse where everything happens somewhere, emotion becomes one of the few constants that can't be relativized away. Rick can travel to any dimension, swap bodies, clone himself, or create entire universes in batteries, but he can't escape the fundamental human experience of loneliness. His pain transcends physical laws, following him across dimensions like a shadow. The Citadel's maze-like corridors and imposing structures weren't simply designed for efficiency or aesthetics. They tell a much darker story that most Ricks would prefer to forget. When you look closely at the architectural elements, you'll notice subtle design choices that mirror C-137 Rick's original garage workspace. These aren't coincidental similarities, but deliberate references to the place where Rick experienced his greatest loss. The vaulted ceilings with their specific curvature, the arrangement of utility pipes along certain corridors, even the geometric patterns in the flooring, all contain whispers of Rick's original sanctuary. This architectural echo serves as both a monument to trauma and a constant reminder of what drove the Citadel's creation in the first place. The formation of the Citadel wasn't a friendly assembly of like-minded scientists looking to share breakthroughs. It was born from genuine fear and desperate self-preservation. After Rick C-137 lost his family, his grief morphed into a vengeful crusade that sent shockwaves through countless dimensions. He wasn't just angry, he was methodically hunting down and eliminating other Ricks. This wasn't random violence but calculated retribution, and it forced the surviving Ricks to acknowledge something they'd never normally admit. They needed each other. These scientists, who typically prided themselves on independence and self-sufficiency, suddenly found themselves backed into a corner. The surviving Ricks, many of whom had never cooperated with anyone, let alone versions of themselves, were forced to form unlikely alliances. C-137's rampage created a situation so dire that even the most stubborn, ego-driven Ricks had to put aside their natural tendencies toward isolation and competition. This cooperation wasn't born from mutual respect, but from mutual terror. What's particularly fascinating is how the early Citadel was structured around trust, or more accurately, the lack of it. The initial construction featured distinct zones based on which dimensions Ricks were considered most reliable or trustworthy. This wasn't arbitrary segregation, but a calculated risk assessment. Ricks from dimensions closer to C-137's numbering were often placed under greater surveillance, while those from more distant dimensions were granted additional privileges and responsibilities. This spatial organization reflected the complex hierarchy of fear and respect that had developed around C-137's reputation across the multiverse. The social stratification went beyond mere architectural divisions. The founding council itself had very specific membership requirements. The original council was primarily composed of Ricks from dimensions where Beth, Rick's daughter, had survived. This wasn't a coincidence or a simple demographic detail. These Ricks shared a critical experience that shaped their worldview. They still had something to lose. Having a surviving daughter meant they understood both the value of family and the potential cost of C-137's continued rampage. Their policies and protocols weren't just bureaucratic red tape. They were specifically crafted to contain and manage the rage of Rick C-137. For the Ricks on the council, this wasn't just about self-preservation. It was about protecting their Beths across multiple dimensions. They understood that family connections were both Rick's greatest weakness and his most dangerous motivation. The rules they established weren't designed for fair governance, but for containment of a specific threat. A Rick unhinged by grief and driven by vengeance. This complex power dynamic explains so much about the Citadel's later development. What began as an emergency shelter against one rogue, Rick eventually evolved into an elaborate bureaucracy, but it never escaped its origins as a fear-based institution. The Council's authority was always rooted in their collective terror of C-137, not in any legitimate claim to leadership. Their governance was built on the foundation of trauma response rather than genuine community building. This history illuminates why Rick C-137 harbors such intense hatred for the Citadel. Every corridor, every council chamber, every regulation exists because of his pain. The entire institution stands as a monument not to Rick ingenuity or cooperation, but to his grief-fueled rampage across the multiverse. For C-137, the Citadel isn't just an annoying bureaucracy. It's a constant reminder of his darkest moment, institutionalized and codified into existence. The relationship between C-137 and the Citadel represents a uniquely twisted dynamic where the most feared individual is also the most influential, even in absence. His shadow loomed so large over the development of the Citadel that even Ricks who joined generations later were indoctrinated with policies and procedures designed specifically to guard against the threat he once posed. This created a cycle of institutional memory where the original purpose sometimes became obscured but never truly forgotten. Over time, this fear-based foundation created ripple effects throughout the multiverse. Dimensions that had never directly encountered C-137 nonetheless felt his influence through the Citadel's expanding reach. Portal technology regulations, interdimensional treaties, even the standardization of scientific equipment across dimensions all bore the fingerprints of the Citadel's defensive posture against their most feared adversary. The vulnerability revealed by this history shows that even Ricks, who pride themselves on being the smartest beings in their respective dimensions, are susceptible to something as basic as fear. Their collective response to C-137 demonstrates how even the most brilliant minds can be driven to unprecedented cooperation when faced with a threat they can't individually overcome. This forced alliance among Ricks who would typically despise each other created uniquely volatile power dynamics that would eventually lead to corruption and factional conflicts within the Citadel itself. In this light, the Citadel's eventual stagnation and bureaucratic bloat makes perfect sense. An institution founded on fear, rather than positive values or genuine community, will inevitably develop dysfunctional systems. The rigid hierarchies, the discrimination against different Ricks, the exploitation of Mortys, all these problems stemmed from the Citadel's traumatic origins as a shelter against one man's vengeance rather than a true community of shared purpose. What started as a reactive measure against immediate danger gradually transformed into something more permanent, but no less dysfunctional. As generations of Ricks and Mortys came to inhabit the Citadel, the original purpose became obscured beneath layers of bureaucracy and social stratification. Yet the architectural echoes of Rick's garage remained embedded in the design, subconsciously reminding all inhabitants of the painful genesis of their shared home. Beyond the physical structure of the Citadel lies something far more profound that Rick created: a cosmic barrier that spans across dimensions themselves. The Central Finite Curve represents the ultimate act of multiversal engineering, where Rick carefully selected which universes he would allow himself to access. Think about it for a moment. In all his interdimensional travels, have you noticed that Rick is always the smartest person in the room? That's not coincidence or luck. It's by careful design. What we've been witnessing throughout the series isn't the boundless infinity of all possible universes. It's actually just a tiny, meticulously curated slice of the multiverse where Rick reigns supreme. The Central Finite Curve isn't just some theoretical concept floating around in scientific discussion. It's a tangible barrier separating realities where Rick maintains his intellectual dominance from those where his genius might be challenged or even surpassed. This revelation fundamentally changes how we should view every adventure Rick has taken Morty on. Each green portal they've stepped through only leads to universes within this artificial boundary. It's like Rick has built a cosmic gated community where he's guaranteed to be the most intelligent resident, no matter which house he visits. The construction of something this massive wasn't a solo project. Creating the Central Finite Curve required collaborative technology from multiple Ricks working together, which tells us something significant. Our Rick wasn't alone in wanting this separation. Other Ricks shared this desire to limit their experiences to worlds where they could remain unchallenged intellectually. They collectively decided to wall themselves off from any universe where they might encounter a being smarter than themselves. The evidence of this curve has actually been hidden in plain sight throughout the series. If you look back carefully, you'll notice Rick never truly encounters beings that can outsmart him until Season 5. Sure, he meets powerful entities and faces serious challenges, but they're challenges of strength or circumstance, not intellectual superiority. The pattern holds consistently. Rick may be outgunned, outnumbered, or temporarily outmaneuvered, but never genuinely outsmarted. This cosmic partition explains another persistent mystery of the show: why certain powerful cosmic entities like the Time Police can't simply eliminate Rick despite his consistent violation of fundamental universal laws. They're bound by the same barriers that define the curve. Within this carefully controlled subset of reality, Rick has established rules that even seemingly omnipotent forces must follow. They exist within his domain, playing by his rules, even if they don't realize it. There's a visual clue that's been right in front of us the whole time. Each time Rick activates his portal gun, we see that distinctive green energy swirling into existence. This isn't just an aesthetic choice. The green color specifically represents travel within the confines of the Central Finite Curve. Travel beyond this barrier would manifest as yellow portals, something we rarely witness in the series. The implications of this cosmic barrier reveal something profound about Rick's character. His greatest fear isn't death or even physical imprisonment, it's irrelevance. By creating the Central Finite Curve, Rick has built an elaborate mechanism to ensure he never has to confront the possibility of intellectual inferiority. He's crafted a reality where his genius is guaranteed, where the fundamental anxiety of meeting someone smarter than himself is eliminated by design. This isn't just about ego protection, though. The Central Finite Curve illustrates that Rick's perceived omnipotence is actually self-created. He's only a god in universes where he can maintain that status. His power isn't absolute, it's carefully curated. Rick has essentially created a cosmic prison for himself, limiting his adventures to worlds he can dominate. It's as if he's playing a game where he's pre-selected only the levels he knows he can beat. The finale hints at something even more unsettling: the existence of beings or entities beyond the Central Finite Curve. This suggests there are greater threats to Rick's dominance waiting beyond his self-imposed barrier. What kinds of intelligences exist out there in the wider multiverse? What beings might make Rick C-137 look as simple as Jerry by comparison? These are the questions Rick has been systematically avoiding by constructing his multiversal safe zone. What's particularly fascinating is how this arrangement explains the strange consistency we see across dimensions. Despite infinite possibilities, the worlds Rick visits maintain certain patterns. That's because they're not random samples from the true multiverse. They're specifically selected universes that fit within parameters Rick can handle. The Central Finite Curve isn't just a barrier. It's a filter that only allows certain types of realities to be accessible. When you think about it, there's something deeply tragic about this arrangement. Despite possessing technology that could access truly infinite possibilities, Rick has chosen to limit himself to a cosmic echo chamber where his superiority goes unchallenged. It's like having a device that could access any channel in existence but deliberately restricting it to only show programs where you're always the main character. The existence of the curve also casts Rick's relationship with Morty in a new light. Perhaps Morty's consistent presence across the finite curve isn't just about camouflage or convenience. Maybe Morty's represent something integral to maintaining the barrier itself. Their specific brainwaves or genetic makeup might be necessary components for sustaining the cosmic partition Rick has established. This also brings new context to the moments when Rick seems genuinely surprised or outmaneuvered. Those rare occasions represent potential cracks in the curve, instances where something unexpected has slipped through Rick's carefully designed filter. Each of these anomalies represents a potential threat not just to Rick personally, but to the entire constructed reality he's built for himself. Those anomalies that threaten Rick's reality aren't coming from outside the curve. The most significant one was hidden in plain sight, wearing an eye patch. In a multiverse with seemingly infinite variations, only one Morty managed to break free from his cosmic role. This single exception represents more than just teenage rebellion. He's a fundamental glitch in the system, proof that Rick's carefully constructed reality contains the seeds of its own destruction. When we first encountered this anomaly in Close Rick Counters of the Rick Kind, the show brilliantly misdirected us. What appeared to be just another evil version of a character actually foreshadowed something far more significant. Not a villain seeking control, but a prisoner planning his escape from the Central Finite Curve itself. His eye patch wasn't covering an injury as we might have assumed. Look closer and you'll notice it was sophisticated technology specifically designed to block the brainwave connection that all Ricks exploit in their Mortys. This isn't just clever gadgetry, it's a direct counter to the very foundation of the Rick-Morty relationship. By blocking this connection, Evil Morty created the first true separation between a Morty and his Rick, taking his first steps toward genuine independence. This small device represents something revolutionary in the cosmos of Rick and Morty, the first successful resistance against the predetermined role assigned to every Morty. Evil Morty's presidential campaign on the Citadel initially reads as a straightforward power grab. The political speeches, the populist rhetoric, it all seemed like typical villainy. But his true motivation was far more sophisticated. The campaign wasn't about controlling other Mortys or punishing Ricks. Instead, It was a calculated move to gain privileged access to the curve's infrastructure. The presidency was merely a stepping stone, a means to reach the control systems of the very barrier Rick created to isolate his preferred universes. The brilliance of Evil Morty's plan becomes evident when we examine his systematic approach. Each step he took wasn't random but precisely calculated to understand and then dismantle the cosmic prison he found himself in. When he orchestrated the mass execution of Ricks after taking power, many viewers interpreted it as simple revenge. But these weren't random killings. They were strategic eliminations of specific Ricks who possessed the knowledge and skills to potentially rebuild the Central Finite Curve after his escape. This methodical approach reveals something crucial about Evil Morty's character. Unlike the emotional reactivity we see in most Mortys, and even in most Ricks, this anomaly operates with cold, calculated precision. He identified the exact Ricks who posed a threat to his plan and removed them from the equation, ensuring that once he broke through, the damage would be permanent. No reconstitution, no repairs, no second chances for the system that had constrained him. What makes Evil Morty truly fascinating is how he represents a philosophical contradiction to the show's established rules. In a multiverse where Rick is supposedly the smartest being, how does a Morty, genetically predisposed to be Rick's intellectual inferior, develop the capacity to outsmart not just one Rick, but an entire civilization of them? The answer reveals a profound truth about intelligence in the multiverse. The limitations placed on Mortys are artificial constraints rather than natural ones. The visual storytelling around Evil Morty further emphasizes his unique status. Notice how the camera frames him differently from other Mortys, often from below, creating a subtle sense of dominance, or straight on, suggesting equality with the Ricks he confronts. His movements are deliberate and controlled, lacking the nervous energy typical of other Mortys. These visual cues reinforce what the narrative suggests. This isn't just another Morty with different circumstances. This is a Morty who fundamentally understands the cosmic system and has learned to manipulate it. Evil Morty's ultimate escape in Season 5 represents the culmination of this long-running subplot. After years of planning, he successfully breaks through the Central Finite Curve, transcending the limitations imposed by Rick's universe. The yellow portal he creates, distinctly different from Rick's green ones, visually confirms he's accessing realms beyond the curve. This isn't just character development, it's cosmic evolution, the first being we've seen escape Rick's carefully curated multiverse. The implications of this escape are staggering. If one Morty could break free from his predetermined role, couldn't others? Evil Morty proves that the potential exists within every Morty to surpass their Rick. They just need to break free from the system designed to keep them subservient. This reveals the Central Finite Curve as not just a barrier against superior intellects from outside, but also as a mechanism to prevent Mortys from reaching their full potential within. Consider the profound irony here. Rick, who prides himself on breaking rules and transcending limitations, created an elaborate cosmic system specifically to enforce rules and limitations on others, especially Mortys. Evil Morty didn't just escape this system, he exposed its fundamental hypocrisy. The supposed champion of freedom in the universe turns out to be its most sophisticated jailer. Evil Morty's journey represents a unique intersection of free will and determinism in the show's cosmology. In a multiverse of infinite possibilities, patterns emerge that seem to lock characters into predictable roles. Ricks are smart but selfish. Mortys are naive but moral. Evil Morty demonstrates that these patterns can be broken, that cosmic determinism has exceptions. His existence raises questions about how many other exceptions might exist beyond the curve, in universes Rick deliberately avoids. When Evil Morty finally breaks through, the visual representation of universes beyond the curve appears briefly. Strange, colorful realms that don't follow the familiar physics we've come to expect. These glimpses suggest that Evil Morty hasn't just escaped Rick's control, but has accessed fundamentally different realities governed by different rules. The multiverse outside the curve isn't just filled with smarter beings, it operates on entirely different principles. Beyond the curve lies cosmic chaos, but within our known multiverse exists something equally fascinating: a vast interstellar bureaucracy obsessed with one human scientist. What if the Federation's fixation on capturing Rick isn't about his crimes at all, but about something far more fundamental to the structure of reality itself? The Galactic Federation, despite its comically inefficient surface and seemingly straightforward antagonism toward Rick, actually emerged from profound necessity. Those endless forms and uniformed officers aren't just bureaucratic excess. They're the multiversal response to a catastrophe that began when the first portal guns tore holes between dimensions. Every paperwork-laden department and procedure was crafted specifically to manage the chaos unleashed by unrestricted interdimensional travel. When you examine Federation architecture more closely, you'll notice something striking about their massive headquarters. The towering structures aren't just generic sci-fi designs, they incorporate elements reminiscent of ancient cosmic temples. These architectural choices appear briefly in Rick's memories of his younger days, suggesting connections between the Federation's origins and Rick's early experiments. The buildings themselves tell a story of how order was established in response to portal technology's introduction to the cosmos. What's particularly interesting about Federation officials is their predominantly insect-like appearance. This isn't just random alien design. These species evolved in dimensions where portal technology first emerged. Their civilizations were among the first to witness the devastating effects of unrestricted dimensional travel, making them uniquely qualified to understand and regulate it. Their evolutionary history is directly tied to the very technology Rick mastered, explaining why they're so fixated on Earth's most wanted scientist. The Federation's standardized currency system reveals another layer of their true purpose. When they briefly occupied Earth, they eliminated traditional money and replaced it with credits. This wasn't simply administrative preference. The credit system was specifically designed to track interdimensional travelers. Every transaction leaves a quantum signature that allows the Federation to monitor movement between dimensions. The seemingly mundane bureaucracy of Federation banking actually conceals sophisticated surveillance technology targeted at beings like Rick, who jump between realities. Have you ever wondered how the Federation knew so much about Earth despite our planet being relatively insignificant in cosmic terms? Their suspiciously detailed knowledge of Earth's geography, languages, and customs suggests they've been monitoring the planet long before Rick returned to his family. Federation records contain information that would be impossible to gather without long-term observation, indicating they recognized Earth's potential importance in the multiversal equation. Their intelligence on human civilization extends far beyond what would be necessary for simple conquest. Federation propaganda portrays Rick as a terrorist and criminal, but their obsession with capturing him specifically stems from something deeper than his anti-government activities. Rick's pivotal role in developing interdimensional travel makes him uniquely dangerous to the cosmic order the Federation maintains. They don't just want to punish Rick, they need to contain the knowledge and technology he represents. Every wanted poster and bounty placed on Rick's head serves the Federation's true mission of controlling portal technology and its consequences. The most intriguing aspect of the Federation isn't their power or reach, but their connection to the original pioneers of interdimensional travel. Federation historical archives contain classified information about the earliest portal users, including Rick Prime. These first-generation travelers caused ripples throughout the multiverse that required intervention, leading directly to the Federation's formation. The organization wasn't created to oppress. It was established as a containment measure against the damage caused by unrestricted dimensional hopping. Those initial portal travelers, operating without understanding the consequences of their actions, created instabilities that threatened entire dimensions. The Federation formed in response, establishing protocols and regulations to prevent further damage. Rick's hatred for the Federation isn't just about their restrictive rules, it's because he recognizes they exist specifically to limit beings like him. Every Federation regulation that frustrates Rick was designed precisely for individuals with his dangerous combination of genius and recklessness. Federation archives contain logs of dimensional collapse events that occurred before standardized portal protocols were established. These catastrophes, triggered by early portal users experimenting without safeguards, explain why the Federation takes such extreme measures to regulate interdimensional travel. Their seemingly excessive bureaucracy serves as a buffer against the chaos that once threatened the very fabric of the multiverse. What makes Rick particularly threatening to the Federation isn't just his intelligence or his portal gun. It's his understanding of both the technology and the Federation's true purpose. Rick knows the organization's origins and has exploited this knowledge multiple times to undermine their authority. His casual destruction of the Federation in The Wedding Squanchers and the Rickshank Redemption demonstrates not just his disregard for authority, but his comprehension of exactly how their systems work. The Federation's fall at Rick's hands wasn't permanent. Branches of the organization continue to operate throughout the multiverse, adapting their approaches while maintaining their core mission. Their resilience reflects their fundamental importance to multiversal stability. Despite their comical inefficiency, the Federation represents one of the few forces capable of imposing order on the chaos of infinite realities. Perhaps most telling is how Federation agents interact with Earth governments. Their detailed files on Earth politicians and military leaders indicate they've been preparing contingency plans for Earth for generations. These weren't just invasion strategies, they were containment protocols for a planet that produced a being capable of creating the portal gun. The Federation recognized Earth's unique position in the multiversal equation long before most humans knew aliens existed. The true significance of the Galactic Federation in the cosmic hierarchy isn't as Rick's nemesis, but as an essential counterbalance to the chaos unleashed by portal technology. Their existence represents a fundamental truth about the multiverse, that even in infinite reality, cause and effect still apply, and actions have consequences that must be managed. The Federation, for all its flaws, stands as the multiverse's immune response to the reality-bending technology that beings like Rick wield so casually. That mysterious green glow we've seen hundreds of times throughout the series isn't just a stylistic choice. It's actually revealing a fundamental truth about reality itself. Portal technology, far from being just another of Rick's inventions, represents perhaps the most significant discovery in the multiverse. What makes it truly remarkable is that across infinite realities, only two beings ever managed to create portal fluid from scratch: are Rick C-137 and Rick Prime. This exclusive achievement isn't just impressive, it's what makes these two variants uniquely dangerous in ways that even the Galactic Federation recognizes. The vibrant green color that's become synonymous with Rick's adventures isn't an aesthetic choice, but rather a visible signature of the rare isotope that makes interdimensional travel possible within the confines of the Central Finite Curve. When we observe Rick activating his portal gun, that luminescent green represents something far more significant than just a cool visual effect. It's the physical manifestation of bending reality itself. What most casual observers don't realize is that portal fluid requires materials that can't simply be manufactured in a garage lab. The key element can only be harvested from dying stars, which explains why Rick's seemingly random space adventures often take him to remote cosmic locations. These aren't just casual trips, they're necessary resource-gathering missions to maintain his supply of this precious substance. The rarity of this material creates another layer of understanding about why Rick's ability to travel so freely between dimensions makes him such a threat to cosmic order. The portal gun itself is another marvel of engineering that reveals deeper truths about interdimensional travel. Have you noticed how Rick sometimes inputs lengthy codes into his device rather than simply firing it at a wall? These moments aren't just dramatic pauses for effect. They represent Rick navigating the complex safeguards built into the technology. The gun's design includes sophisticated parameters that prevent travel to certain dangerous or protected dimensions, suggesting that even Rick recognizes some boundaries shouldn't be crossed. The complexity of portal technology became particularly evident in Season 6, when the entire system temporarily failed. This breakdown wasn't just a plot device. It provided viewers with our first real glimpse into the cosmic rules that actually govern interdimensional travel. The failure of portal technology demonstrated its inherent fragility and the delicate balance required to punch holes through the fabric of reality. During this period, we saw a multiverse struggling to recalibrate, suggesting that portal connections aren't just artificial constructs, but interact with natural cosmic forces. What's particularly fascinating about portal technology is how it fundamentally reframes our understanding of Rick's genius. For all his brilliance, what if Rick's greatest achievement wasn't so much invention as discovery? The most plausible origin of portal technology suggests that Rick and Rick Prime didn't create an entirely new phenomenon, but rather recognized something that was already there. The multiverse naturally creates these connections. Their genius was in identifying these natural pathways and developing the means to access and control them. This perspective shifts our understanding in significant ways. Portal technology might be better understood as harnessing a natural cosmic force rather than manufacturing an artificial one. Just as early humans didn't invent fire but learned to control it, perhaps Rick's true breakthrough was recognizing patterns in the multiverse that others couldn't see and developing tools to interact with them. This would explain why only 2 Ricks across infinite dimensions made this discovery. It required not just intelligence but a particular kind of perception that only these variants possessed. The natural existence of interdimensional pathways also explains why the Federation has been so desperate to regulate portal technology. They're not just trying to control a powerful invention. They're managing access to a fundamental cosmic force that, left unchecked, could destabilize reality itself. Their efforts represent the multiverse's attempt to maintain equilibrium in the face of beings who can manipulate its basic structure. When we examine Rick's portal gun more closely, we can see evidence of this discovery-based approach. The device doesn't create portals from nothing. It identifies points where the barriers between dimensions are thinnest and then amplifies these natural weaknesses to create viable pathways. The fluid itself acts as both detector and enhancer of these natural connection points, explaining why it needs such rare cosmic materials to function correctly. This reframing also helps explain the consistency of portal behavior across dimensions. If portal technology were purely invented, we might expect to see wildly different versions throughout the multiverse. Instead, the green portals maintain remarkably consistent properties, suggesting they're tapping into an underlying natural phenomenon that remains constant across different realities. Season 6's temporary breakdown of portal functionality provided additional evidence for this theory. Rather than simply ceasing to work, the portals malfunctioned in specific ways that suggested they were responding to natural cosmic forces reasserting themselves. The technology didn't just break. It reverted to following natural laws that Rick's modifications had previously circumvented. Understanding portal technology as discovered rather than invented also explains why knowledge of its creation is so dangerous. If other beings realize that the barriers between dimensions have natural weak points, they might develop their own methods of exploitation, potentially with catastrophic consequences. Rick's jealous guarding of this knowledge isn't just about maintaining his unique advantage. It's about preventing widespread access to a power that could unravel the multiverse itself. The rare isotope that gives portal fluid its signature green glow serves another crucial function. It allows the user to navigate specifically within the Central Finite Curve. This explains why evil Morty needed to understand portal fluid composition to break through to the wider multiverse. By modifying the isotope, he could access the yellow portals that lead beyond the artificial boundaries Rick had established. This connection between portal technology and the curve further emphasizes how Rick's greatest tools are interconnected. His portal gun doesn't just let him travel anywhere. It lets him travel specifically to places where he remains the dominant intellect. The technology itself reinforces the cosmic prison he created, highlighting how deeply Rick has embedded his limitations into the very tools that grant him freedom. While Rick Sanchez can seamlessly tear holes in space with his portal gun, there's one frontier he deliberately avoids: time itself. That dusty box labeled time travel stuff, sitting in the corner of his garage, isn't just a writer's room in-joke or a reference to Back to the Future. It represents the only cosmic force that even the smartest man in the multiverse approaches with genuine caution. When we look closely at Rick's relationship with time, we notice something fascinating. Despite his aversion to direct time travel, temporal manipulation constantly appears throughout his adventures. This contradiction reveals a subtle truth. Rick isn't avoiding time travel because he can't master it. He's avoiding it because he understands the catastrophic consequences better than anyone else. The episode A Wrinkle in Time perfectly demonstrates why Rick treads carefully around temporal mechanics. When time fractures after Rick, Morty, and Summer are uncertain about their actions, we witness the multiverse's natural defense mechanism activate. The fourth-dimensional beings that appear don't just represent random cosmic entities. They function as antibodies responding to a temporal infection. Their existence confirms that the multiverse has built-in safeguards against time manipulation, similar to how a body fights disease. What makes these fourth-dimensional beings particularly significant is that they operate completely outside Rick's usual sphere of influence. Unlike most adversaries who can be outsmarted or outgunned, these entities exist on a plane where Rick's conventional advantages become meaningless. They represent the natural laws of time, asserting themselves against anyone, even Rick, who disrupts the established order. The Time Police introduced in Season 2 further emphasize this point. These aren't just another bureaucratic organization that Rick can dismiss or overthrow. They're enforcers of temporal laws that predate even the Citadel's existence. Their authority stems from something more fundamental than interdimensional politics. They represent universal constants that maintain stability across all realities. What's particularly telling is how Rick approaches temporal issues compared to spatial ones. While he casually hops between dimensions with his portal gun, he creates elaborate workarounds when dealing with time. In the Snake Time Travel episode, Rick demonstrates this perfectly. Instead of directly traveling through time himself, he creates specialized inventions like the Time Crystal that allow him to influence temporal events without personally entering the time stream. These time-adjacent inventions aren't just clever tricks. They're calculated attempts to manipulate time without triggering its defensive mechanisms. By working at the edges of temporal law rather than breaking it directly, Rick maintains a delicate balance that allows him some control without facing the full consequences of true time travel. The fundamental issue with time travel in Rick's universe becomes clear when we examine the paradoxes it creates. While portal technology can navigate the complexity of infinite dimensions, it cannot resolve the logical contradictions that emerge when causality itself is broken. A portal can take you to a different version of reality, but time travel risks unraveling the fabric that holds all those realities together. This explains why certain events appear fixed across the multiverse, despite the infinite possibilities that should exist. Time doesn't just flow differently in each dimension, it serves as the fundamental scaffolding that prevents total cosmic chaos. By creating the Central Finite Curve, Rick effectively carved out a section of the multiverse where he could maintain control over space. But time remains the one variable he cannot fully master. The true danger of time travel becomes apparent when we consider its relationship to the Central Finite Curve. Rick's carefully constructed pocket of reality depends on certain causal relationships remaining intact. True time travel could potentially unravel these relationships, allowing beings from beyond the curve to break through his cosmic barrier. This makes time not just dangerous, but existentially threatening to the reality Rick has built for himself. This relationship between time and the curve explains why Rick appears genuinely nervous when temporal rules are broken. In episodes featuring time manipulation, Rick displays a rare vulnerability, not because he lacks the intelligence to understand time, but because he understands it too well. He knows that while spatial dimensions can be navigated, temporal paradoxes can collapse entire sections of the multiverse. The time crystal from the Snake episode perfectly illustrates Rick's approach to temporal mechanics. Instead of directly traveling through time, he creates a tool that allows him to influence temporal events from a safe distance. This workaround lets him affect time without becoming entangled in its paradoxes, showing his respect for cosmic laws even as he finds loopholes within them. What's particularly fascinating is that Rick's avoidance of time travel might stem from personal experience rather than theoretical knowledge. His understanding of temporal consequences seems too intimate to be purely academic. Perhaps early in his scientific career, before perfecting portal technology, Rick experimented with time travel and witnessed firsthand the horrors it can unleash. This would explain why he keeps the box of time travel stuff as a reminder rather than discarding it entirely. The episode, A Wrinkle in Time, provides our clearest window into time's mechanics in the Rick and Morty universe. When uncertainty splits time into multiple potentialities, we see that time doesn't just flow linearly, but exists in quantum states that collapse based on observation and decision. This quantum nature of time explains why Rick can't simply go back and prevent tragic events in his past. Changing one quantum state would create branching realities rather than rewriting his personal timeline. This quantum understanding of time connects directly to portal technology. While portals allow travel between existing dimensions, they can't create new temporal branches without destabilizing the entire system. This limitation isn't a design flaw in the portal gun, but a fundamental constraint of the multiverse itself, one that even Rick must respect. The Time Police's existence confirms that temporal laws transcend dimensional boundaries. Their ability to monitor and enforce these laws across infinite dimensions suggests they draw authority from something more fundamental than any government or council. They represent the multiverse's immune system operating on a scale beyond Rick's usual sphere of influence. This immune response becomes particularly clear when we see how the multiverse reacts to temporal tampering. Fourth-dimensional beings don't just punish rule breakers, they actively repair damage to the time stream. Their presence indicates that time isn't just another dimension to explore, but the fundamental structure that maintains cosmic order. The cosmic hierarchy that exists in Rick's universe reveals itself most clearly through the beings he cannot control. Unity stands as perhaps the most fascinating example. A hive-mind entity with the ability to assimilate entire populations under its singular consciousness. What makes Unity particularly significant isn't just its vast power, but the fundamentally different evolutionary path it represents. Unlike beings from within the Central Finite Curve, Unity's consciousness operates on principles that challenge even Rick's understanding of intelligence. When Rick encounters Unity, we see something rare: genuine respect and even vulnerability. This isn't the typical Rick who dominates every room with his intellect. Instead, we witness a man who recognizes an entity operating on a different cosmic wavelength altogether. Unity's ability to control thousands of minds simultaneously suggests it evolved in dimensions where collective consciousness became the dominant form of intelligence, a possibility that only exists beyond the artificial boundaries Rick helped establish. The Truth Tortoise represents another cosmic entity that humbles even the self-proclaimed smartest being in the universe. This seemingly ordinary creature carries knowledge so profound that merely gazing into its eyes can shatter sanity. What makes the Truth Tortoise so dangerous isn't just the information it possesses, but what that information reveals: the artificial nature of Rick's carefully constructed reality. The tortoise doesn't actively threaten Rick. Its mere existence poses a philosophical challenge to everything he's built. World Ender provides yet another example of cosmic entities that command Rick's genuine caution. Despite Rick's typical bravado, he approaches certain powerful beings with uncharacteristic restraint. These encounters reveal the uncomfortable truth that Rick's godlike status has boundaries. Boundaries that become increasingly apparent when he faces entities that evolved under different cosmic rules. Zeus and other godlike beings throughout the multiverse aren't merely powerful in the conventional sense. They represent universal constants that manifest across all dimensions, fundamental forces personified. Their existence follows patterns that transcend the normal variability we see across dimensions. Notice how consistently these godlike figures appear, regardless of which universe Rick visits. This consistency hints at deeper cosmic laws that even Rick must acknowledge. Perhaps the most telling evidence of these cosmic hierarchies comes from observing how Rick's technology behaves around these entities. The reliable portal gun, his cybernetic enhancements, and even his simplest gadgets often malfunction or operate unpredictably in their presence. This technological interference isn't random. It's evidence that these beings operate under fundamentally different cosmic principles that can override Rick's scientific understanding. The fart cloud being that Rick and Morty encountered demonstrates this principle perfectly. A telepathic gaseous entity capable of manipulating matter and reading minds, it existed in a state fundamentally incompatible with Rick's understanding of consciousness. Rick's typical approach, analyze, understand, control, failed completely with this being. The fart's ability to perceive reality across multiple dimensions simultaneously placed it beyond Rick's ability to predict or manipulate. What makes these encounters particularly noteworthy is Rick's emotional response. A man who, typically approaches every situation with detached scientific curiosity or sardonic confidence, instead shows genuine fear and caution. When faced with Unity, the Truth Tortoise, or similar cosmic entities, Rick's demeanor changes subtly but significantly. His shoulders tense, his movements become more measured, and his typical verbal dominance gives way to uncharacteristic restraint. This pattern of behavior reveals something profound about the multiverse Rick inhabits. Despite his incredible intellect and technological mastery, there exists a natural order he cannot fully comprehend or control. These cosmic entities collectively point to higher layers of reality that Rick can perceive but not master. A humbling truth for someone who has deliberately constructed his reality to maintain intellectual superiority. Consider how Rick's interactions with these beings differ from his usual encounters. Typically, Rick solves problems through superior understanding. He identifies the rules of a situation and exploits them. But when facing Unity or the Truth Tortoise, he cannot simply outthink them because they operate according to principles beyond his frame of reference. The existence of these entities suggests that the multiverse has natural limitations built into its structure, cosmic guardrails that even Rick Sanchez cannot dismantle. The implications extend beyond individual encounters. These cosmic entities collectively suggest a natural order to the multiverse that transcends Rick's manipulation. They represent evolutionary paths and forms of existence that developed according to laws Rick doesn't fully understand. In a universe where Rick has artificially arranged to be the smartest being, these entities serve as uncomfortable reminders of the vastness beyond his self-imposed boundaries. This cosmic hierarchy explains much about Rick's existential dread, a theme that underpins the entire series. His nihilism isn't simply philosophical posturing. It's the natural response of a man who has glimpsed enough of the cosmic order to understand his relative insignificance within it. Despite his godlike abilities within the Central Finite Curve, Rick knows that greater forces exist beyond his understanding or control. The true significance of these cosmic entities becomes clear when we examine their collective impact. They aren't just powerful obstacles or interesting anomalies. They're manifestations of the multiverse's inherent structure. Just as time represents a boundary Rick respects, these beings represent aspects of cosmic reality that cannot be hacked, manipulated, or outsmarted. Their existence proves that despite Rick's technological mastery, the multiverse maintains order through forces that transcend individual brilliance. This revelation contextualizes Rick's entire approach to existence. His cynicism, his substance abuse, his reluctance to form attachments, all stem from his awareness of cosmic forces beyond his control. A man who can build devices capable of destroying entire realities still approaches certain entities with genuine humility, suggesting he recognizes boundaries to his power that he rarely acknowledges openly. The presence of these beings creates a fascinating tension within the series. Rick, who routinely dismisses gods, governments, and natural laws as inconveniences to be circumvented, nonetheless treads carefully around certain cosmic entities. This selective caution reveals his deeper understanding of the multiverse's true nature, an understanding that both empowers and constrains him. For all Rick's cosmic encounters with beings beyond his control, an equally significant pattern exists right under his roof. In a multiverse of infinite possibilities where anything should be possible, the Smith family appears in remarkably similar configurations across countless dimensions. This statistical impossibility suggests that Beth, Jerry, Summer, and Morty aren't just Rick's reluctant companions but cosmic constants as significant as any Truth Tortoise or Unity. Think about it for a moment. In a truly infinite multiverse, we should see endless variations of Rick's family structure. Yet whenever we glimpse alternate dimensions, the core Smith family unit remains strangely consistent. Even in dimensions where they appear as furniture, aliens, or shrimp people, the family dynamic persists. This consistency isn't lazy writing. It's a deliberate pattern pointing to something fundamental about the structure of Rick's reality. When Rick first returned to Beth's life, it seemed like he was simply reconnecting with his daughter. But looking deeper, we can see something more calculated in his choice. Across dimensions, Beth consistently demonstrates intelligence comparable to Rick's own. This genetic similarity isn't coincidence, but rather appears deliberately cultivated. Her scientific aptitude, when properly nurtured, approaches Rick-level genius in many dimensions. This suggests her genetic makeup may have been specifically designed with a purpose related to maintaining the Central Finite Curve. She inherited the intellectual capacity necessary to understand the universe's deeper workings. Jerry presents an equally fascinating case study. We've laughed at his seemingly infinite incompetence across dimensions, but this universal constant serves a specific purpose. Jerry functions as a cosmic counterbalance to Rick's intelligence, a human representation of mediocrity that grounds Rick's reality. This isn't just about Rick's enjoyment of tormenting Jerry. Their relationship represents a fundamental dynamic necessary for cosmic stability. Think about it. The smartest man in the universe persistently shares space with the most average man in the universe. This pairing creates a balance that keeps Rick's intellect from completely detaching from human experience. Summer's role initially seemed secondary to Morty's, but her character reveals something equally significant about the family's cosmic function. Her remarkable adaptability to cosmic horrors, from Cronenberg worlds to interdimensional adventures, suggests she represents evolutionary potential that even Rick hasn't fully recognized. While Morty serves as camouflage for Rick's brainwaves, Summer demonstrates an ability to engage with and navigate cosmic threats without breaking down. This resilience points to untapped abilities that could be significant in the multiverse's future. Most tellingly, the Smith family house appears at the same coordinates in almost every dimension. This allows Rick to easily find it when dimension hopping, suggesting the location itself holds cosmic significance. It's not just convenience. It's a fixed point in the chaotic multiverse that Rick can reliably return to. This consistency further emphasizes that the family serves as a cosmic anchor in a sea of infinite possibilities. The pattern becomes even more significant when we examine Rick's behavior across dimensions. Even Ricks who claim to reject family connections still orbit around some version of the Smiths. This gravitational pull toward this specific family configuration reveals something fundamental about Rick's own limitations. For all his godlike abilities, Rick consistently requires this family unit to function. Far from being the burden he claims they are, the Smiths provide a cosmic stability that even the most powerful being in the universe cannot artificially replicate with technology. This explains why Rick, who could live anywhere in the infinite multiverse, chooses to remain in this specific household configuration. The family isn't just his hiding place or emotional comfort zone. They fulfill a specific cosmic function that maintains his sanity and possibly even the structure of reality itself. The Smiths aren't just Rick's family. They're his anchor to reality in a cosmos constantly threatening to dissolve into meaningless chaos. Consider what happens when Rick tries to leave the family. Catastrophe inevitably follows, forcing him back into their orbit. Even when he attempts to disconnect from them emotionally, cosmic forces seem to conspire to reunite them. This isn't just narrative convenience. It's evidence of a deeper predestination in their relationship. The family provides a sense of identity and purpose that grounds Rick's existence amid infinite possibilities. We see this dynamic play out most clearly when Rick attempts to replace his family with substitutes. Clones, robots, and alternate dimension versions never quite satisfy the same cosmic need. There's something irreplaceable about this specific configuration of people that resonates across the multiverse. They aren't interchangeable parts, but rather specific variables in a cosmic equation that keeps reality stable. What's particularly fascinating is how the family responds to cosmic threats. When faced with interdimensional invaders, collapsing realities, or alien conquerors, the Smiths consistently demonstrate an unexpected resilience. This adaptability suggests they've evolved or been designed to withstand the unique stresses of living with a being like Rick. Their durability in the face of cosmic horror isn't random luck. It's evidence of their specific cosmic purpose. The Smith household serves as more than just Rick's base of operations. It's a fixed point in a roiling multiverse of possibilities. When Rick travels between dimensions, the reliability of finding a version of his family at the same coordinates provides a consistency that allows him to maintain his sense of self across infinite iterations of reality. Without this anchor, Rick would likely lose himself entirely in the infinite possibilities of existence. Rick's choice to remain with this family reveals something profound about his own limitations. Despite his godlike intellect and technological prowess, he cannot replicate the stability they provide. His attempts to create perfect worlds, whether through simulation, memory manipulation, or alternate dimensions, inevitably fail without the grounding influence of family connections. The Smiths aren't holding Rick back. They're providing the emotional and cosmic infrastructure that allows his genius to function. Looking at the seemingly disconnected adventures of Rick and Morty reveals something fascinating when we step back to see the bigger picture. Those one-off episodes that initially appear random actually form an intricate cosmic tapestry when viewed as a complete narrative. It's not just random hijinks, it's a carefully constructed path leading somewhere significant. What initially seemed like throwaway jokes in the early seasons mysteriously transform into major plot points years later. Remember that seemingly unimportant comment about Rick's past in Season 1? By Season 5, it becomes the foundation for understanding his entire backstory. This isn't just clever writing. It suggests a predetermined cosmic design that Rick himself might be unconsciously following. The pattern becomes even more evident when we examine Rick's fascination with creating miniature universes. The microverse battery wasn't just a convenient power source, it was Rick's experiment in playing God on a manageable scale. Inside that battery, Rick created an entire civilization whose sole purpose was to generate power for his car. Similarly, Anatomy Park wasn't just an amusement park inside a homeless man. It was another controlled environment where Rick could dictate the rules of existence. And Fruppyland? This childhood playground he built for Beth served as yet another controlled universe where physics bent to Rick's will. These mini-universes share a common thread. They're all spaces where Rick exerts complete control, suggesting he's practicing for something far more ambitious. Each creation allows him to experiment with different aspects of universal design: energy harvesting in the microverse, biological systems in Anatomy Park, and reality manipulation in Fruppyland. These aren't random adventures, but rather steps in Rick's unconscious preparation for larger cosmic responsibilities. Rick's encounters with various intellectuals follow another distinct pattern. His confrontation with the devil in the cursed item shop wasn't just about proving science trumps supernatural forces. It was Rick testing himself against a different kind of intelligence. His battle of wits with Zeep inside the microverse battery wasn't random either. It was Rick confronting a mirror image of his own intelligence, a test of his ability to outwit someone exactly like himself. Each intellectual opponent represents a different type of cognitive challenge that Rick systematically overcomes. There's also a recurring pattern in Rick's relationship with established power structures. His systematic dismantling of governments across the cosmos, from the Galactic Federation to the Citadel to countless planetary systems, reveals a consistent theme. Rick isn't just being anarchic, he's methodically challenging every form of centralized authority he encounters. This repeated pattern suggests a deeper purpose. Perhaps Rick is unconsciously preparing the multiverse for a fundamental restructuring by removing these power centers. Certain locations appear multiple times throughout the series, creating what amounts to a cosmic map of significant nodes in the multiverse. The recurring settings aren't just convenient reused animation assets, they're important waypoints in Rick's journey. Places like Blips and Chits, Bird Person's planet, and even specific dimensions like the Cronenberg world serve as anchors in an otherwise chaotic multiverse. These repeated visits trace a pattern across dimensions that only becomes visible when we track Rick's movements over multiple seasons. What's particularly interesting is how these patterns intersect. The combination of creating controlled universes, testing himself against different intelligences, dismantling power structures, and revisiting key cosmic nodes reveals Rick's unconscious progression toward some kind of cosmic revelation. He's not just wandering aimlessly, he's being drawn towards something, even if he doesn't realize it himself. Consider how Rick's seemingly random decisions often lead to significant cosmic consequences. His choice to turn himself in to the Galactic Federation at the end of Season 2 wasn't just a character moment. It was a calculated move that ultimately led to the Federation's collapse. His involvement with the Citadel wasn't just about avoiding other Ricks. It created the conditions for evil Morty's rise and the eventual breaking of the Central Finite Curve. These aren't coincidences, but rather evidence of Rick unconsciously working toward a greater cosmic purpose. The adventures that appear most disconnected from the main storyline often contain the most significant cosmic revelations. That seemingly throwaway interdimensional cable episode. It established the principle of infinite possibility that underlies the entire show's mythology. The random adventure with Unity? It revealed Rick's deep loneliness and his search for connection in a fragmented multiverse. Even the seemingly pointless Pickle Rick episode contained profound insights about Rick's avoidance of emotional vulnerability and family therapy. What emerges when we connect these dots is a portrait of Rick engaged in a cosmic journey of self-discovery. The man who claims to understand everything about the multiverse is actually learning about himself through each seemingly random adventure. He's not just the smartest man in the universe. He's a being unconsciously preparing for something greater, something that requires all these experiences and tests to be ready for. The apparent randomness masks a deeper purpose. Rick's casual dimension, hopping and problem-solving across the cosmos, is actually building towards something significant. Each encounter with a new form of intelligence, each created microverse, each dismantled government, and each revisited cosmic node adds another piece to Rick's unconscious preparation for his true role in the multiverse. This hidden pattern transforms our understanding of the show from a series of random, entertaining adventures into a cosmic hero's journey. Rick isn't just fleeing from family commitment or pursuing selfish pleasures. He's being unwittingly drawn towards some greater cosmic revelation that will redefine his place in the multiverse. The multiverse doesn't just contain Rick, it contains infinite versions of Rick, yet somehow our Rick C-137 breaks the mold in ways that fundamentally alter the cosmic equation. In a reality where sameness should be the rule, how does one variant become the exception that threatens the entire system? When we examine the vast multiverse of Ricks, a startling pattern emerges. Most Ricks fall into two distinct categories: those who fully commit to family life and those who abandon their families entirely. But Rick C-137 exists in a unique third space. He experienced the devastating loss of his original family, then later found and connected with a replacement family. This contradictory life experience creates something unprecedented in the cosmic order: a Rick capable of genuine emotional depth. This emotional capacity makes C-137 fundamentally unpredictable. The multiverse operates on patterns and probabilities, but our Rick defies these calculations at every turn. He's like a rogue element in a carefully balanced equation, capable of decisions that no algorithm could predict because they're driven by something most Ricks lack: genuine emotional connection. What's particularly fascinating about Rick C-137 is that he's one of only two Ricks who independently invented portal technology. While most Ricks throughout the multiverse simply borrow or steal this technology, C-137 created it from scratch alongside Rick Prime. This innovation marks him as exceptional even before considering his emotional uniqueness. The combination of unparalleled intellect with emotional complexity makes him truly singular among infinite variants. The yellow waistcoat Rick C-137 wears serves as more than just a fashion statement in this cosmic context. It's a visual marker of his exceptional status, a small but significant detail that separates him from the sea of identical blue-shirted Ricks across dimensions. This distinctive garment symbolizes the emotional burden he carries, a constant reminder of both his losses and the connections he's formed despite those losses. Rick's frequent catchphrase, "Wubba lubba dub dub," initially appears to be meaningless gibberish, but it actually translates to "I am in great pain" in bird person's language. This hidden meaning reveals the true emotional state behind Rick's chaotic exterior. While other Ricks might display nihilistic tendencies, C-137's pain stems from genuine loss and trauma, creating a fundamentally different motivation driving his actions across the cosmos. His relationship with Morty further illuminates this uniqueness. While most Ricks view their Mortys as disposable tools, useful for camouflaging brainwaves but ultimately replaceable, C-137 forms a genuine bond with his grandson. We see moments of real protection, affection, and even sacrifice that go beyond mere self-preservation. This attachment isn't just unusual. It's cosmically significant because it represents a variable the multiverse never accounted for. What makes this even more remarkable is that Rick achieves this emotional depth despite knowing the statistical irrelevance of any single dimension or relationship. He understands better than anyone the infinite nature of reality, yet chooses to invest in specific connections anyway. This paradox, caring deeply within a framework that renders caring meaningless, makes C-137 a truly unpredictable element in the cosmic design. Rick's interactions with other characters further demonstrate this exceptional emotional capacity. His friendship with Bird Person spans decades and dimensions, showing a loyalty most Ricks would find pointless. His complex relationship with Unity reveals a vulnerability that other Ricks would view as weakness. Even his antagonistic relationship with Jerry demonstrates a restraint that most Ricks wouldn't bother maintaining. These connections aren't just character quirks. They represent fundamental deviations from the cosmic pattern. The trauma in Rick's past, specifically losing his family at the hands of other Ricks, created the perfect conditions for this anomaly to emerge. Most beings would either collapse under such grief or harden completely, but C-137 developed a unique third response, maintaining the capacity for connection while acknowledging the pain it brings. This contradictory emotional state makes his decisions impossible to predict using standard multiverse probability calculations. From a cosmic perspective, this unpredictability makes Rick C-137 both dangerous and potentially transformative. The multiverse operates on patterns, probabilities, and predictable reactions, even across infinite variations. But C-137 introduces true randomness into the system through his emotionally driven choices. He's capable of acts of destruction or healing that no other Rick would consider, making him a true variable in an otherwise deterministic equation. Consider the implications of this uniqueness. In a multiverse defined by patterns, a truly unpredictable element could either bring balance or complete chaos. Rick C-137 represents both destruction and creation simultaneously, capable of tearing down cosmic structures like the Citadel or the Federation, but also potentially building something entirely new. His journey isn't just about adventure or scientific discovery. It's about determining what role this anomaly will play in the cosmic order. The question becomes not just what makes Rick different, but what this difference means for the multiverse itself. Does his unique emotional capacity represent an evolutionary advantage that could spread to other Ricks? Is he a cosmic mistake that threatens the stability of the entire system? Or is he perhaps the inevitable result of the multiverse's own complexity, a necessary counterbalance to the cold determinism of infinite reality? When we step back and view Rick's journey across dimensions, we can see that his seemingly random adventures actually form a pattern of their own. Not one determined by cosmic law, but by his unique emotional landscape. Each adventure, each relationship, each victory and failure shapes this anomaly in ways that reverberate throughout the multiverse. It's not just that Rick is different, it's that his difference matters on a cosmic scale. This is perhaps the most profound aspect of Rick C-137's story. In a multiverse where nothing should matter because everything exists simultaneously across infinite variations, Rick has somehow discovered, or perhaps created, meaning through his unique emotional journey. His pain, his connections, his struggles all contribute to a cosmic significance that defies the very laws of probability he understands so well. As we reach the end of our cosmic journey through Rick and Morty's multiverse, we find something surprisingly profound beneath all the sci-fi chaos. Dan Harmon himself has pointed out that the show's mythology isn't just clever storytelling. It actually mirrors our own search for meaning in a vast and often overwhelming universe. The endless dimensions and cosmic horrors aren't just for shock value. They're reflections of our own existential questions. What's most interesting is that the creators hope we realize something important. Just like Rick created his Central Finite Curve to feel in control, we all do something similar in our own lives. We construct comfortable realities where we can feel like the smartest person in the room, creating boundaries that make the universe less terrifying. But as the show repeatedly demonstrates, those boundaries ultimately limit us. Perhaps that's why, as you drift off to sleep tonight, the most meaningful takeaway isn't about portal technology or cosmic entities. It's that even in a multiverse of infinite possibilities, genuine connection remains the only thing truly worth pursuing. In a reality where nothing matters, the connections we choose to make become everything.